Uh, we're still dealing with Jacob and Esau. And, this morning, Jacob is on a journey, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. If you remember last week when Jacob stole Esau's blessing, if you would, or he supplanted him, which I think is a better term than steal. God told Rachel that Jacob was going to be the leader. And she took that, ran with it, and kind of tricked Isaac in that. And Esau got quite ticked, and he went off and he married Ishmael's daughter, Hagar's son. So, from that first, it's hard for me not to think of it as a mistake, but it had to be God ordained. But we've been paying for the price of Ishmael for several thousand years now, and especially right now. Well, so Jacob heads off to get a wife, and he goes to the land of his forefathers, and we'll talk about that in a bit. And on his way, he stops and he takes a nap, gets a rock as a pillow, hard head, and he takes a nap, and that night, an angel of the Lord comes and visits him. And he says these words, and this is from chapter 28. I'm the Lord, the God of your father Abraham and the God of Isaac. I will give you and your descendants the land on which you are lying. Your descendants will be like the dust of the earth, and you will spread out to the west and to the east and to the north and to the south. All peoples on earth will be blessed through you and your offspring. I am with you. I will watch over you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land, and I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. And so Jacob awakened, and he said, surely this is the gates of heaven, Bethel, the house of God. And so, especially Baptists seem to choose that word a lot to name their churches. There's a ton of Bethel Baptist churches, the house of God. I think it's kind of appropriate. And it's Bethel, God, God's house, just literally. And then I like this. So then Jacob, this is back still in chapter 28. Jacob made a vow saying, if God will be with me and will watch over me on this journey, I am taking, and will give me food to eat and clothes to wear, so that the Lord will be my God, and this stone that I have set up as a pillar will be God's house. And this next line is special to me. And all that you give me, I will give you a tenth. I respond quite a bit to this is free. I'm doing the offertory this morning as well. And I've got a story for you, but I often have people say that the tithe is under the law. It's a law issue. It's not, we're free from the law. And it almost makes me want to cuss. This was a long time before the law. Abraham gave tithes. Isaac paid tithes. The last book of the Old Testament, which was not chronologically the last book with Malachi, will a man rob God? That doesn't apply anymore. And I honestly don't understand. Yeah, maybe I do understand why people who are trusting God for all of eternity don't trust Him with their finances. I don't understand that. I saw a picture one time, a guy being baptized and he's under the water. He's holding his wallet up. That was kind of free. So the introduction now, Jacob is on his journey, a 400 and something mile journey. And that's where we are today. And Sherry, since you read better than me, would you read our text?
Genesis 29, 1 through 25. Then Jacob continued on his journey and came to the land of the eastern peoples. There he saw a well in the open country, with 3 flocks of sheep lying near it, because the flocks were watered from that well. The stone over the mouth of the well was large. When all the flocks were gathered there, the shepherds would roll the stone away from the well's mouth and water the sheep. Then they would return the stone to its place over the mouth of the well. Jacob asked the shepherds, "My brothers, where are you from?" "We're from Haran," they replied. He said to them, "Do you know Laban, Nahor's grandson?" "Yes, we know him," they answered. Then Jacob asked them, "Is he well?" "Yes, he is," they said. "And here comes his daughter Rachel with the sheep." Now Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the older was Leah. The name of the younger was Rachel. Leah had weak eyes, but Rachel had a lovely figure and was beautiful. Jacob was in love with Rachel and said, "I'll work for you 7 years in return for your younger daughter Rachel." Laban said, "It's better that I give her to you than to some other man. Stay here with me." So Jacob served 7 years to get Rachel, but they seemed like only a few days to him because of his love for her. Then Jacob said to Laban, "Give me my wife. My time is completed, and I want to make love to her." When morning came, there was Leah. So Jacob said to Laban, "What is this you have done to me? I served you for Rachel, didn't I? Why have you deceived me?"
I can remember asking Sherry's dad if it was all right if I married Sherry. Jacob labored 7 years for Rachel. I've been laboring 57 years for Sherry. Just saying. And it just seems like a day or two.
After I read for you. It never ends.
You're inspired. Yeah. Point number one. And please think about this. As we go through each point, if you notice, every point that we do is a question. And you ask questions for answers. So be thinking about your answers. Do you see your life as a journey? Then Jacob continued on his journey, and he came to the land of the eastern people, and there he saw a well, and you know the story. Well, he was going from Beersheba to Iraq. It was 450 miles. Maybe he was on a donkey or a camel. Never rode a camel, but it doesn't look like the most comfortable thing. And it was this long, long journey. And if we don't see our life as a journey, I really believe we miss the purpose and the meaning of life. Where are you going? As Christians, our ultimate journey is heaven, to be with Christ. And I have found that the journey in life, let me back up. Yeah, I hope you have goals in life. I hope there's things you want to accomplish. Building a business, getting from a journeyman to the high-paid guy. If you don't enjoy the journey, I doubt if we enjoy the destination. And I'll say that of heaven. If we don't enjoy the journey to heaven, I doubt if we're going to enjoy heaven very much. If you don't enjoy praising and worshiping God or reading God's word or fellowshipping or praying, I don't know how enjoyable the destination is going to be for us. And Jacob said in Abraham, in Hebrews 13, for we have no lasting city here, but we seek the city that is to come. What helps me on the journey is setting audacious goals. Often I'll set goals, and if I meet them, I'm disappointed because I didn't obviously set them high enough. That might sound odd, but 35 years ago, this coming April, Sherry and I started a church in San Diego. In my first service, here were my words. We're going to be a church of 40,000 people. I didn't just upchuck that, throw this number in the air. I could have said, we're going to be a church of 400, or we're going to be a church of 40, or whatever. And when you set that kind of a goal that only God can meet, people get on board. And people immediately got on board. And we grew 100 people a year for 30 years or more. Why? It was an audacious goal. Now I remember, because of health reasons, I retired too early. I lived a lot longer than I thought I would, but thankful. And I remember retiring, and we didn't hit 40,000. And I was invited to a World Health Organization. Vernon Brewer was just here a couple of weeks ago. I've been chairman of his advisory board forever. I'm not any longer, but so they invited me, and they honored Sherry and I for our involvement with World Health. And they called us forward, and I'm very seldom surprised, but I was surprised. And they gave us a reward because that year we had planted our 40,000th church. So that's the God we serve. When we enjoy the journey, and our purpose of the journey is to glorify God, be careful of getting off the train at every stop. Get off, refresh yourself, and get right back on, and keep going. I think, Joe, you guys, labored in this facility, in this church, for a long time, and you didn't quit.
We're not going to quit.
Yeah. And I honestly believe the best is yet to come. Why? It's a journey. With an ultimate destination of being with Christ in a place called heaven. And so Jacob was on this journey. It was a long, arduous journey, and 450 miles of desert. You go to bed at night and a rock is your pillow. So I would really hope that you see your life as a journey. And so that's my question. Do you? Do you purposely give that some thought, that I'm on a journey? I've not arrived yet. And I'm not going to stop traveling. Whether my shoulder hurts or my hips hurt or my feet hurt, I'm going to keep on trucking. Matter of fact, that's my son's motto in his office when he took my place. He had I guess it's a rock band or something. Keep on trucking. And there's this guy walking hardly. Questions, anybody? Comments? Point number 2.
The group is the Grateful Dead.
There we go.
It's a strange title
I
for her.
figured it was a great day. Okay, number 2. How can we know unless we ask? Jacob asked the shepherds, "My brothers, where are you from?" "We're from Haran," they replied. And he said to them, "Do you know Laban, my neighbor's grandson?" "Yes." And then he asked the third question, "Is he well?" If you note, when we started the journey class, it's been a couple of years now at least, hasn't it? It's been a while. From the get-go, all we have done is ask questions. Questions Jesus asked, questions the Apostle Paul asked, questions asked in the book of Revelation. Now, next week will be our 72nd question asked in the book of Genesis. I met with a pastor yesterday, good friend of mine. And we were talking about staffing churches. And I remember saying to him, I think it was yesterday, I am more interested in hiring people. And I haven't hired anybody for a long time, but anyway. I'm more interested in the questions they ask than the answers they have. What are your expectations of me? Just asking this way instead of promoting themselves. And so here comes Jacob. The first thing he does is he asks questions. Yeah, where's my cousin or my uncle's grandson? And then, is he well? And I don't believe he was being just rhetorical. Those are legitimate questions. And boy, let's make sure that our questions are real and not indictments. So, did you eat that cookie? The last one? Well, that's an indictment. I do my best not to watch anything news-wise because all they are is a series of indictments. So I read my news instead of watch it, and they can indict in print just as easily. I would hope in asking questions that we're looking for direction. We're looking for help. Both ways. Great question. How can I help you? I mean, and then you got to be careful. I'll give you an example of an indictment. What do you want? Leave me alone. And a lot of it's our tone, isn't it? And it's hard to say, what do you want in a nice manner? Morally, what can I help you with? In 1 John 3:22, and whatever we ask, we receive from him because we keep his commandments and do what pleases him. James says, you ask and you do not receive because you ask wrongly to spend it on your passions. On life's journey, I'm just reflecting now, so forgive me for that. Everything that I've ever received in life of any value at all, anything, is because I asked for it. Asked Sherry's dad if I could marry her. Asking Christ to come into my life. I write God a letter every day, and I'm going to imagine most of my sentences are our questions. What do you want me to do, Lord? And I ask him this a lot. How did I do today? So, and that's not we can't snooker God. We can't trick him. And I think some of the greatest ways we can pray is prayer asking, Lord, what? To me, the greatest prayer in the Bible. Paul going from Jerusalem to Damascus, Syria. Jesus comes down, knocks him off of his pony. Lord, what would you have me to do? I almost feel that God's mandated to answer that. Parents, if your child comes and he or she sincerely asks for direction, and you knew the answer, would you tell him or her? I'm sure that we would. How much more will our Heavenly Father answer the questions we ask him? Now, I know I strained at this a little. He's looking for his cousin's grandson, but he had to ask. And so when we're on our journey, ask more questions. Question, really. Does appearance make a difference?
Yes, absolutely.
Most likely, those of us that are married, we were first attracted to how the person looked more than what the person was. I am an adamant promoter of appearance. I had some rules that I won't mention now because they weren't the godliest of rules. When it comes to appearance of those, I'll stop there. 1 Samuel 16:7, referring to Saul, King Saul. Do not look at his outward appearance, but his height or his stature, because I rejected him. For the Lord sees not as man sees. Man looks at the outward appearance, but God looks at the heart. Okay, here it goes. I'm going to expose Tony's ugliness. That's what I care about in trying to reach people, is the outward appearance. Why? Because man looks at the outward appearance. I can't look at your heart. Your heart is God's job, not mine. So if I'm going to promote the kingdom of God, my goal was the outward appearance. Now, hopefully, I would choose the right people because they had the right heart. In business, you can't have a sloppy shop. You can have the best products in the world, but if the draw isn't there, people won't come. I've given a lot of thought over the years of why do we have the church buildings that we have. If stop and think, most churches, even humble churches, are attractive. This is a beautiful building. And with the steeple and stained glass, why? Why do we do that? I was looking at my memories today. A couple of years ago, Sherry and I were staying in a tower owned by the Medici family. And the view is spectacular. Florence, Italy is about the size of Toronto. There's over 100 Renaissance churches in that little town. They're magnificent. Why would they do that? Why stained glass? Why just the decor of churches? Why? Because man looks at the outward appearance. And if we're going to represent the kingdom of God, we need to represent it beautifully. was it?
Tony, even if you talk about the church or a business or your home, that appearance is extremely important, but people will not be impressed and get on board unless there's vision. Right? Vision is equally important, like for the church. Right? So you could have the most beautiful of stained glass windows, but if people that go to church there on Sunday feel that they're not being led by someone with vision, they won't stay.
Yeah, the problem with marketing is it works for the good and the bad. You can have a beautiful facade and a bunch of junk inside. So the facade will draw them, but what's inside will keep them. But to draw them, the purpose of the draw is to get people in. Whether it be a business, your home. G.K. Chesterton, he said, and I can quote him fairly closely. He says the difference in man and the beast is one word: art. Art. A-R-T, art. Appearance attracts. Character keeps. I'm sure maybe over the years when we were younger, there was some beauty and handsome that attracted us, but once you got close to it, it was repulsive. Because that's all it was a facade of beauty or decor.
You know, Tony, when I was responsible for interviewing the preachers, when we looked for a new preacher here, the first question I always asked them, what is your vision for this congregation? That was a question I would ask everyone. And if they wouldn't, they would say, well, they wouldn't have a vision. I wanted to see exactly where they were going to lead us, because it was important to the man we got. Even though we got fooled, it's their trouble, but
Not the current pastor.
yes. not Mark. Mark's good. He's got a vision.
Let me take it another step. What's your vision? Great. How are you going to get there?
Right.
If you don't have a plan to get there, you're not on the right journey, and you're not asking the right questions. And again, that outward appearance, it's, can you draw by character alone? Yeah, you really can, but it takes a little extra steps to get people to come.
I don't know if we have to go. I mean, the early church had no appearance. I said the early church had no appearance. I mean, you had a bunch of beggars and fishermen, and they were the most powerful force for. I mean, when we talk about the church, the drawing factor is not us. It's always God. You know, and when we try and dress up,
one's visual and the other one is not. And that's the one that we are playing with, is the visual one. So like
I'm not saying appearance doesn't matter, but sometimes I think we focus too much on it.
right. But you know, it's like eating something, you know what I mean? If you can't smell, you can't taste it. If you eat first with your eyes, you know what I mean? A lot of people won't eat certain things because they work or for texture, you know what I mean? Like guacamole, I just don't like the texture. You know what I'm saying? So, but for the early church, the visual wasn't a part of it because they were really behind the scenes.
I've got to contend with that. It may not have been stained glass and steeples and art, but you know, they did things like raise the dead, the blind see, the lame walk, walked on water. That was pretty visual stuff.
But that's all I'm saying is that's the appearance that matters. You know, we can dress up the building, we can dress ourselves up. But if that's what we're using to draw, if we draw people by carnal means, we'll have to keep them by carnal means.
No, I disagree with that. You're drawing carnal people. You're not going to draw carnal people spiritually. You're going to draw people by desire and need. Answering questions people are asking. Now, what's the purpose? That? No. Get them to Christ.
What's cardinal people?
Carnal.
Carnal, okay.
But I don't know, I think that because we aren't the ones that draw, the Spirit draws all men. You know, what does Jesus tell us? He says, no man can come to me except that the Father draw him. You know, we aren't here to try and drag anyone to God. We're here to preach the gospel because that's the medium that the Spirit uses to drag his people in. And when we focus on the gospel, we don't have to do anything else.
What keeps them here?
The gospel, Jesus.
You don't think people keep people here?
I think that the people of God respond to the voice of Jesus.
Okay, but because a lot of the time people come back to church because of an individual who may have spoke to them, or for some reason they may have been attracted to that individual, or they just like something about that person that draws the other person to come back,
But
hopefully long enough to where the church itself can keep that person. That's kind of like with the sower of the seeds, right? We are I always use the terminology that we are the soil, you know, because without the good soil, the seed's not going to work, right?
Yep.
So we need to be the soil for the seed that's cast. Whoever casts a seed, or however, you know what I'm saying? So a lot of the times I think people keep people.
But I think that's an outflow of the gospel changing. You know, when we are representatives of Jesus, we are what that person needs.
It's kind of like driving by the building. You don't know who's inside the building until you go inside. You know what I mean? Like, you can drive by the building all
Let's
day
expand the
long.
word of appearance. I wrote a thing yesterday on this phrase, hospitality. I have to look. Give me 1 second. I got it right here. Hospitality intervention. And here's the word. A fella comes walking into church. He's all grumpy looking and ugly. What do? We ignore him, or do we befriend him? That action is an appearance. Greeting one another. That's an appearance. Anybody ever come to church in a bad mood? Yeah, but you come anyway, and what do? You put on Christ. You take a deep breath and you go greet each other. And you know, when C.S. Lewis says that, and I don't necessarily totally agree with this, but I get the bent. If you don't love someone, act like you do, and eventually you will. For example, if you're patient, if you're kind, if you're long-suffering, if you don't counter wrong-suffering, if you do all the attributes of love, what are you doing? You have the appearance of love. And if you don't think that some people are harder to love than other people, you've not met some of the people I've met. And when you put on that appearance of Christ, like a garment, Christ will be reflected. I understand. Of course, I don't think any of us have ever been to the first century church. I've been to the upper room, where supposedly the church was burned. It's a beautiful room in Jerusalem. I've been to the garden too. It's a beautiful garden. Now, was it then? I don't know. How about this? The emblem of suffering and shame. There's something about the cross of Christ that draws people. What is it? It's an appearance. It's not the salvation, it's the appearance. Every time, Nikolai, every time I see you, who you are is how I recognize you. And you smile and you ask legitimate questions. That is what I see. That's what draws me. Now, the more I get to know you, I see Christ in you. When I first met you, I didn't know that, other than the appearance of your words, the appearance of your thought, the appearance of your questions. Was Jacob wrong in being attracted to Rachel instead of Leah? Leah was the older. You married the first daughter first. I mean, that's what took place here. What drew him? She was a looker.
And he was willing to stick around, right?
Yeah, for 14 years. So, appearance won't keep you, but it will draw you.
What happened to Leah? Did she ever get married?
Yeah, to Jacob, that was.
Oh, he married both.
Yeah, and two of her concubines. And
Yeah.
a couple of, we'll close with that one. That's a good one.
But that's the nugget right there. The nugget is an appearance can be more than how we look. It's a greeting. It's our words. It's our thoughts. The emblem of suffering and shame. That takes a whole new realm of the word appearance.
Yeah.
It's not just the way we look. It's everything that we represent.
This is going back in our history. And this is, why do you think all the old churches had steeples and bells? If you came to a town, what did you look for if you were a believer?
The steeple.
You look for the steeple. That's where the church is. So that appearance, there's no religious significance that I know of, at least in the steeple. The bell was to get your attention, to get you to come, so you could hear it and you could see it. Nikolai, I understand, but if you're going to draw a carnal man, he or she is going to come by what they see first. They're going to stay by. I do that. This is my big thing. I want to throw up when I hear pastors especially say, "You don't have to go to church to be a Christian." If you want to meet Christ, here's one. I really love my wife. Boy, Sherry's just the greatest this, the greatest that, and does all. I just don't want to be with her. I don't want to hug her. I don't want to hold her hand. I don't want to sit by her. What kind of love is that? We are the body of Christ. We reflect Christ. And when someone comes to this building, hopefully any church, any gathering of the body of Christ, they meet Christ. I said this yesterday in a meeting that I had. When you come to church and you're sitting among a bunch of believers, Christ is there. The music might be off key. The preaching might be mediocre. It's almost irrelevant because Christ is there. And I want to draw people any way that, oh boy, this is going to sound terrible, hook or crook. And if I can use something of beauty or something attractive to draw them, I'll use it. I would hope what keeps people is the gospel, but what draws people is God's people, us. That we're pleasant enough to draw folks to Christ.
Tony, it's like our prayer life, as a new believer and as for lack of a better word, a seasoned believer, our prayer life changes. Because at first, we're praying, oh boy, everything's gonna be perfect. I want a new house, this car's old, you know what I mean? And then as you become, then you realize you're praying that for forgiveness, from my point of view, you know what I mean? And thankfulness for what I have.
I think that's a great example, Chuck. The appearance of God meeting all of our needs and blessing us abundantly is what drew us to Christ. Forgiveness of sin is what drew us. What keeps us is relationship. Anyway, good stuff though, thank you. Number 4. What's the difference between love and lust? Jacob was in love with Rachel and said, I will work for 7 years in return for your younger daughter, Rachel. I think the greatest example of love and lust is Ammon in 2 Samuel 13:15. And remember, Ammon,
Tamar.
the sister of
Tamar.
yes.
Tamar.
He forced himself on her, he took her, abused her, and then he goes and he hated her with intense hatred. In fact, he hated her more than he loved her. And Ammon said to her, get up and get out. It wasn't love, it was lust. And maybe, Nikolai, this fits into what your scenario of what you're saying. Oh boy, I'm gonna say this very hesitantly. Is it a lust for Christ that draws us, or a love of Christ that draws us?
I don't think so. I think it's like certain songs, like I've been listening to Crowder, and there's some certain songs that I wish the church would play because they're like songs of conviction. You know what I mean? When I first became a Christian, I went to a service, and I was born and raised a Catholic, but not a born again Christian. And so I went to church service, and I felt I was convicted by what the pastor was doing. I thought he was talking to just me. And I made the altar call, and I was baptized, and I haven't changed since. Well, I shouldn't say that. I never went back. Never mind. You know what I mean? I turned and went. But, so I lost that rabbit. I don't know. Sorry.
Yeah, I think young people especially confuse lust for love. But you know, Jacob, I believe it was a real love, but what drew him first was her appearance. So, and I'm applying this to the church.
So one's visibly, like we had said, that's what, the other one is your heart that's being convicted or that's realized that you need God in your life because, you know what I'm saying? That's what was, for me, is realizing that sit up and take notice. It's time or things, and I've tried. I mean, I was 40, you know what I mean, at the time. And I'm a little older than that now. But I needed to change in my life. That's what I wanted, was to change. It wasn't something that drew me visually. You know what I'm saying? It's like, so I think there's two reasons why we may come. Visually or heartfelt movement. You know what I mean?
I think lust is the antithesis of love. Lust is this way. Love is this way. Lust is taking, love is giving.
Yeah.
Number 5, is love patient? Laban said it is better that I give her to you than some other men. Stay here with me. So Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, but they seemed like only a few days to him because why? Of his love for her. 1 Corinthians 13. First line of love. Love is patient. If we find ourselves impatient, then we're probably not practicing love. Comments on number 5?
How do we know that Rachel and he hadn't been with each other during those 14 years? Let's face it. I mean, that would be pretty hard to sit back and if you have this lust for this individual for
Well, 'cause he
14
loved
years and not exercising.
If that's the key, he wasn't lusting for her, he loved her. So, there's a lot to say about betrothals in the scripture. It was a big, big deal. It was the same as being married, but without the relationship of marriage. So I'm going to have to believe that you waited.
Well, in that culture, they executed you if you violated that. Like, think about what happened to Jacob's daughter. You know, when Shemites came down, Jacob's 2 sons, they went and slaughtered the entire town. They said,
Yeah,
this ain't gonna happen.
Dinah. Okay, number 6. Okay, I want some guesses on the blank. Did Jacob get his what? What do you think? It's an old word.
Comeuppance.
Comeuppance. I love that. That was my mom's go-to word. You're gonna get your comeuppance. 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 I looked up the word because my mom really she used that word all the time. It's an Americanism, first appeared in Harper's Magazine in 1859. Just Desserts is another one. And if you're a Hindu or a Buddhist, it's karma. So did Jacob get his comeuppance? Then Jacob said to Laban, give me my wife. My time is completed, and I want to make love to her. When morning came, there was Leah. So Jacob said to Laban, what is this you have done to me? I served you for Rachel, didn't I? You have deceived me. I mean, is that comeuppance or what? What did he do to Isaac? You know, his son Esau deceived. So now let me get a little carnal on you. He must have been drinking a lot of wine at the reception. I mean, if you go into your wife and you wake up in the morning, it's somebody else, and you didn't know that. Anyway,
Tony, in 26 it says, and Laban said, it must not be done so in our country to give the younger before the firstborn. Fulfill her a week, and we will give you this other one for the service which you will serve with me still another 7 years. So he didn't have to wait 14 years. He gave her right. 1 week. Yeah, 1
well,
week.
it was 7 years later before Rachel had Joseph, and unless
It says, then Jacob did so and fulfilled her week. So he
Of
gave
Leah.
him his daughter Rachel as his wife also.
for 7 more years. Was it? I always thought
The
that
end
was-
of verse 30 says, and he worked for Laban another 7 years, following the fact that he was given Rachel.
He
He's
had to
given
work
both.
for her, but he gave her, but he still had to work.
Well, the giving, same was when he gave her to her the first time. He worked 7 years before he could consummate the marriage. my thinking is so he gave her to he gave her to him. And that was another betrothal. I thought of it. I could be. I don't know. But she didn't have Joseph for 7 more years. Than Benjamin. So
Something to point out here too is, Jacob may or may not have got his comeuppance here, but Jacob had 4 women that he slept with, and he had 12 sons, and they were all one nation. Jacob had 1 wife, and he had 2 sons, 2 nations. You know, when God told Abraham,
say that last line.
Jacob had Isaac had 2 sons, and they were 2 nations. Because we always talk about, you know, Abraham had Hagar and Sarai, or Hagar, give it birth to Ishmael, and Ishmael was the other nation that God. But God doesn't need us to make his plans come to fruition. You know, Abraham circumvented that promise that he had from God in having Hagar bear a son for him. But God didn't need him to make a separate nation because God was doing that already in Abraham. You know, we just we push the journey a little faster because we think that we can make it come to fruition prior to what God. And now look at what we have as a result of that. You know, it's always been a thorn in their side.
Yeah, I'm guilty of pushing the envelope a lot to my demise. Why have you deceived me? I just thought that was a great line for concluding his relationship. Just for an FYI, through Leah came Reuben, the firstborn, and Simeon, and Levi, and Judah. And then through Bilhah came Dan and Naphtali. Through Zilpah came Gad and Asher. Then back to Leah came Issachar, Zebulun, and Dinah, the daughter whom the brothers defended her, if you would. Then Rachel had Joseph and Benjamin 7 years later. And next week, Dan and Naphtali, Gad and Asher came because of mandrakes. And this is going to be some speculation on what's the big deal of mandrakes? What are mandrakes? And, at least some history has some pretty spicy opinions of what mandrakes are. Because after she got the mandrakes, here comes Joseph. Just saying. Any questions, anybody?
Tony, I like the fact that you said earlier when we first started about if you were interviewing someone, you liked their questions to you, whether you haven't. My son changed jobs recently. He had a really good job, but he went and interviewed for this job, and he said he knew that the company was going downhill, and they really wanted him. So when he got there, he said he let them talk to him, and then when he said to them, he said, "Now I'm going to ask you some questions. What are you willing to pay me? I want a part of the company." And and I said, "You really didn't say that to them, did you?" He said, "I most certainly did." He said, "I knew my worth. I knew my worth," and he said, "I knew they wanted me, and I knew that I could do it." And he's been there, I don't know how many months now, but he said they're making profit now, so he did what he thought he could do, And he said, "I asked them questions," and I said, "You really asked them questions?" He said, "Yeah," because he said, "I want to know what I'm getting into," So sometimes you have to turn the tables and be inquisitive yourself about a job rather than them asking you everything.
Well, I think I took some liberties in a pretty simple story, but pretty pertinent. God thought it worthwhile putting in the scriptures. But it's interesting to see how how God uses us, how he used Isaac and Jacob and Rachel and Rebecca, patriarchs of the scriptures.
Yeah.
You know, Tony, I was gonna say something about love. You know, we really don't know how much we love somebody till we have to go through a real hard time with them. And I always say to people, you don't know what love is about till you have to push the wheelchair. That's, because you can walk away from it. You can walk away, because I've seen people walk away when their wives or their husband was down, or they had children that were, had some kind of disability. But that is when they say the rubber hits the road. Because that's what it needs, because I know for my own self, we've been married going on 57 years now, coming up in June. But the thing about it is,
First 60 are the hardest.
yes, she had to push the wheelchair for me, and I pushed the wheelchair for her. And that's when it comes.
And not off a cliff.
Yep.
Let's go to church, everybody.
Same wheelchair.